It's hard to follow up an episode as amazing as episode 5. And to be honest with you, I think episode 6 doesn't quite live up to the challenge. I think the only thing that would be satisfying after so much glorious action is an info dump of answers. And instead, here we get the promise of answers to come. In episode 7, maybe? Or 8? I mean, I'm nervous because Disney Plus with their Marvel and Star Wars shows has a track record of not delivering the answers that they promised. You know, saying they'll come maybe in season 2, and then it takes forever for season 2, and then maybe season 3, and you're like, come on, man. So at least Qimir took his shirt off this episode, and I told you about Beefcake, and Saul acted very suspicious, which is, I think, very interesting. All right, so as the Acolyte does enter its endgame, just 2 episodes to go, it's also time to start thinking about the potential legacy of this show. For all the hate that the show has garnered, it has consistently trended at the top every single night that it has aired, which is a plus for Disney Plus. Building on the momentum of X-Men 97, which was also very popular on social media, but unfortunately had not the same great drop time. I really think this 9 p.m. Eastern Standard drop time, I'm sorry, my global friends, but I think, for the news sources primarily, it's a tough call. But I really do think that it benefits content to drop at this time. The HBO drop time is excellent. And I still think it's ridiculous that Prime Video gave it up when they were also one of the first to jump on it. All right, so we've been talking about how Beefcake has been vital to the popularity of the MCU. And sure enough, the official entrance of the Stranger in episode 5 created a perfect storm of thirst tweets and respect for his fighting skills, that the online hate seems to have at last finally been countered. There was a lot of hate out of the gate for this show, but there was a real lack of positivity to combat it. Now we're finally finding ourselves in a space where at least it seems, evenly matched. So that's really important for the show. Further proof of the show finally finding its footing is that the Stranger's helmet went on pre-sale after episode 5 and sold out almost immediately at $100 a pop. The stock seems to have now been replenished, though, is because now you can still reorder it. But still, the Stranger is, I think, definitely a very cool character. As I said, last week's episode was basically an ad for Cortosis, and they continued with the hard sell this week, which we will discuss. I really love what they're doing with Qimir. But basically, the Acolyte has people talking about Star Wars. That's really important. And even more so is that the Acolyte has finally succeeded in bringing in the new fans to Star Wars at a level that Disney has wanted since they first acquired the property, but have not yet been able to do. So the Acolyte with Qimir finally accomplished that. They brought this new group, I think, the social media fans, and they got them interested in Star Wars, which is, no small feat because they have not been able to do it. Another big question is that are any of these characters going to make the jump from beyond this show to becoming overall Star Wars fan favorites? I think the obvious contenders are Qimir and Saul, who might even end up being more of a yin and yang situation than May and Osha. In fact, who was Qimir's Jedi master? We discovered that at one point he was a Jedi, the one who literally stabbed him in the back. Was it Saul? I think that's the first obvious guess. But some fans are guessing that based on the shape of Qimir's scars, perhaps Vernestra was his master with her lightsaber whip, which is maybe why they revealed it in this episode. Because you have to wonder, why did they do that? Because, I think a prequel show has to be careful. Any prequel has to be careful about introducing things that are very cool, Cortosis, lightsaber whips, but that have never shown up in any of the Star Wars stories that take place afterwards in the timeline. You're like, why were these awesome things abandoned? I mean, I'm willing to go along with Cortosis because it's just so cool, but I felt that the lightsaber whip was kind of pushing it. However, the Acolyte has proven to be very deliberate with some of its writing. Like Leslie Headland admitted that all the red shirts going into the fight with the Stranger were an intentional misdirect so that audiences would assume that they would be the only characters killed and not realize the 2 main characters, Yord and Jeki, would also be killed. And that's very clever. Yet at the same time, we seem to be worlds away from the Witches of Brendok storyline on this show. So we'll see if Headland and company really do end up tying this all together, in a satisfactory way. Because sometimes the show seems quite clever, but then other times you're like, maybe not. We'll also see if Saul or Qimir come out of this season alive. We still don't know what's going on with Saul yet. And, so far the other 3 Jedi from that group on Brendok have been killed. Well, all 4 die. It would seem that would be the neat way to tie it up. But I like Saul. I'd like him to stick around. He's very menacing this episode. As I told you, I'd like to see him go to the dark side, to be honest with you. But I think it's safe to say that if Qimir survives, with the jury's still out on Saul because, we don't know everything about him. But I think Qimir is already clearly a fan favorite, especially for the new Star Wars fans that he's bringing into the franchise. They've really found something here with Qimir. And kudos to Manny Jacinto. Star Wars is an almost 50-year-old franchise, and when it started, it portrayed an old-school black and white approach to good and evil. You're either good or you're evil. Sure, you can go back and forth maybe, but at every moment, you have to pick a side. The Acolyte, though, and specifically Qimir, embraced the modern thinking of a world of grays, and that there is no clear-cut good and evil, and that perspective means that one person's evil is another person's good, and vice versa. Qimir literally argues semantics when Osha calls tapping into the Force via the emotions of anger, fear, and hatred as the dark side. It's like, whoa, don't label me, man. Qimir also says he's in search of the power of 2, aka the rule of 2, and that he's so desperate for an acolyte that he'll switch Osha in for May, no problem, because maybe she can see the big picture. And for a little extra incentive, he puts on a show. Now, this is still Disney, so you have to use your imagination. But still, the dialogue is surprisingly suggestive. Creator Leslie Headland has also said that she was drawn to Obi-Wan's line that Darth Vader was seduced by the dark side. That's interesting. And it seems that with Qimir, she's presenting someone who can seduce in every possible way. Not just sexually, but also by offering power. Power seduces. He tells Osha that she was never able to become a Jedi because her anger over what happened on Brendok has held her back. But that's only due to the Jedi teachings of how you can tap into the Force. But he tells her that with his own approach, call it what you will, what held her back as a Jedi would actually make her very powerful as a Sith. And that's when he brings out the helmet. He brings it back. He's not only fixed it, but we see that this unknown planet is rich in Cortosis, so that if she likes the test run, they could conceivably make her own helmet. Oh, please do! And I hope it looks a little different. This is fun. Make your own Cortosis helmet. What a class! Let's add that to the Disney theme park experience. You need a lot of Cortosis. But there's a lot on that planet. And speaking of that unknown planet, eagle-eyed Star Wars fans have already guessed that this is likely the planet Beldemnik, an ocean planet that has a lot of Cortosis, which was controlled by, wait for it, Darth Tenebris and Darth Plagueis, who we just talked about last week in the history of the Sith. A master and apprentice, and eventually the apprentice kills the master so that they can become the master and take on a new apprentice. Plagueis killed Tenebris, then took on eventually at some point Palpatine, aka Darth Sidious, as his apprentice, who then slain him and eventually went to get Anakin Skywalker and turned him into Darth Vader. So it's like the little Sith family tree. It is, speaking of Darth Vader, this show sure likes Anakin Skywalker, much to the annoyance of some Star Wars fans. But I thought it was a sweet touch to have her do Darth Vader-style breathing when she put the helmet on, right? I liked that. And we learned that not only does Cortosis disrupt a lightsaber and block out Jedi mind powers, but it also acts as a portable sensory deprivation tank, making it just you and the Force in there so that you can create perhaps the most powerful connection with it. I liked that a lot. Sold! I was already sold, but now I feel really good about my decision. And wow, you cannot see that through that thing as I suspected, which solidifies my earlier theory that you have to see through that helmet by using the Force, which is interesting because sensory deprivation tanks are often depicted as allowing their users to see by other methods. You've seen it on Stranger Things. And there are actually real-life reports of people doing this in real life for the CIA and beyond. Fascinating. Also, last episode, some Star Wars fans also picked up on the fact that Kylo Ren's theme was being used in the background. And Headland says that was also intentional. And there are some theories that Qimir and perhaps Osha are the start of maybe not the Sith, but the Knights of Ren, who are an independent group that aren't officially Sith. And what do you know? The initiation rite to get into the Knights of Ren is to kill someone, just like what has been asked of May on this series. I mean, they don't specify with a weapon or not, but maybe they changed the orientation rules. They're like, it seems like, let's just get somebody. They also have a strong belief in their freedom and their right to do and take anything that they want. Sounding pretty familiar. Now, I know right now Qimir is all about the rule of two, but maybe he'll decide, what the heck, let's expand into a group. I'm not really buying Qamir's pitch though when you talk about recruitment. Could he really turn Osha in just a 30-minute episode? Seems like it. That to me is a little weak when it comes to the writing. And I think it's very unfortunate that Osha and May, who are supposed to be the leads of this show, are so quickly losing ground narratively. Some fans are shipping Osha and Qimir, by the way, but how can that be romantic? I mean, I was all for Reylo. I totally was a fan of Reylo. But this, he's swapping out one twin sister for the other. I just think that's really creepy. All right, now what's going on with Saul? While Qimir vamps it up on that Cortosis planet, back on Kofar, Saul is having a nervous breakdown. Very effectively, though. Lee Jung-jae's acting is fantastic. Like that quiet moment of reflection when he's resetting the transmitter. That was really nice. I was like, beautiful. Such a good actor. But then, speaking of the transmitter, he eventually turns it off? Yes, when the Jedi say they're coming with a rescue team, he not only turns off the transmitter, but he leaves the planet, going off the grid with May as his prisoner. I also saw some people point out that say what you will, but Qimir did not tie up Osha, and Saul has tied up May. I really am fascinated by Saul and Qimir. I'd like to think that he knew it was May the whole time. I'm like, come on, Saul, tell me you knew it the whole time. But realistically, when do you think he was tipped off? I think there's a chance when she said in their conversation that she'd been when May was pretending to be Osha, she said she was a Jedi. And of course, Osha never made it to Jedi. But maybe just, Basil was with him in the end there. So maybe Basil just is the one who tipped him off. I gotta say, I thought the Basil stuff was super lame. And did May turn Pip evil? I would also think that Saul would be alerted by the fact that Pip now had glowing red eyes, basically. I was like, seems like maybe that's not Osha. Here's another new bit of info, though. Saul says he's had 16 years to think of what he'd say to May if he ever had the chance, which means he knew that she survived all along. That's an incredible bit of information. What kind of Jedi abandons a child alone on a planet after that massacre, seemingly alone? Even if he did think she was evil, that is just a really big bit of information. And whoa, the groundwork has also been laid to maybe blame that entire Jedi massacre on Kofar on Saul. Vernestra clearly knows he didn't do it, but when that Padawan suggests that maybe he did, she doesn't correct him. I think she's keeping her options open for a possible scapegoat, especially because she's just learned that the Senate is about to conduct a review of the Jedi. Politics and bureaucracy. Always the true evil of Star Wars. And maybe real life. Very scary. So those are my thoughts on the Acolyte episode 6. And there are just 2 more episodes to go. And we know that one of those will have a significant amount of flashbacks when we finally find out what really happened on Brendok. Maybe that's where Saul is taking May. Maybe that's where we'll have our rendezvous. But we'll see. We'll see what happens. I don't think it's enough time to tie everything up together in a satisfactory way, but let's see. Again, I just hope that Qimir and Saul make it out of this season alive and that Osha and May get back on track with their character development. So what did you think? Share your thoughts down below, subscribe today, and of course, as always, you can check out some more videos right now.